Go-to-market strategies for MedTech. How to win in a crowded market.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. This is a very interesting panel. I myself been an entrepreneur for 10 plus years, and I still have not figured out how to win a crowded market. So we have very special folks here at the panel today. We'll start by having them introduce themselves and talk a little bit about what they do so that we can get some context. You want to start, Anish?
Yeah, absolutely. Really happy to be here. I've had a pharma background, really doing deals within health tech and pharmaceutical companies. Now I have my own company where we invest in startups at an early stage and also help deal making between pharmaceutical companies and health tech companies. Really, really good to be here.
Yeah, so, I'm loud. My name is Amel Havkic. I am the founder of EvoMed Consulting. I'm actually a practicing specialist physician and advisor for MedTech companies. And in everyday clinical life, we saw countless MedTech companies collect dust and ultimately fail. So we started working with MedTech companies, helping them align their solution with real-life clinical problems, ultimately ending up saving them millions in losses, improving business outcomes, and specifically patient safety.
Hi, my name is Dr. Ruchi Das. I'm a clinician turned entrepreneur. For over 15 years, I've been working with MedTech companies across the globe, helping them scale. I have led multiple successful exits, worked at the policy advocacy level, and I think today I'll bring in the lens of evidence, commercial strategy, and reimbursement to the GTM strategy. Thank you for having me.
Morning, Christophe Van der Linden. I'm the founder of GSD Consulting and former CEO. We sold to NAMSA 2 years ago. We are a strategic marketing consultant dedicated to the MedTech environment. And after my exit, I became also an independent investor and board member focusing on MedTech.
Thank you, thank you. All right, let's start this. I don't know how to win, but I know that we can start from the other side. Let's start with a simple question, Anish, and we'll follow with everyone else. Why do startups fail?
No, it's a $1 million question, right? And it comes after the million is lost. So one of the things that we've observed is startups fail, and the reason they say they fail is because they have no cash left. But you have to go a little bit behind why there is no cash left. And a lot of times you have these founders' dilemma, right? I've created an idea, I'm an entrepreneur of something, and you fall in love with your idea so much that you stop looking into the possibility of that idea. Is it the right concept that actually fits within the marketplace right now? Is it the right timing to bring that product in the marketplace? Is there someone who's going to pay for it? Of course, the use case is always based on the end user, that the patient is benefiting in a certain way, the doctor is benefiting in a certain way, but all of this goes through a chain of pockets of money that you need to tap into. And if those pockets are not examined or looked up before, then you're already late to the game. And that's what happens most of the times. And that's where investors lose confidence in you. That's where the market, there is no opportunity for you to get into. And I think that's one of the reasons. And even, let's say, peeling back a little bit, that happens because you may not have the right structure from your team. Usually companies focus on the science and the technology piece, but they usually forget that that is a team that would bring and create the product, but doesn't mean that's the right team to actually bring that product to the market as well. So you need to define that structure in a way that there is a balance of forward-looking things and also things that you need to execute today, which actually help raise funds and also make sure that you have a sustainable model for earning money. That's where my reasoning so far has been working with the companies.
Yeah, so I would take a clinician's approach to this. Now imagine this, you're doing something extremely important. Let's say you're writing an email to your investor, to your boss, and then autocorrect comes in and corrects it all the time. You get annoyed. The first thing you do when you get a new phone is you turn off autocorrect, right? So this is how clinicians feel when a solution doesn't really fit their workflows. So we will automatically gravitate towards using solutions which feels natural as humans, not only as clinicians. This is the reason, for instance, why the iPhone is performing so good, specifically in the beginning. Now maybe not anymore. Yeah, so definitely that is one thing. And the other thing is, I agree completely with you, founders oftentimes fall in love with their solutions, but the problem with that is that you need to actually solve a meaningful problem which is behind your solution, right? Because if your problem is not meaningful in such a sense that does need solving, your solution will end up shelved. So I would strongly advocate to think about the problem that you're trying to solve, basically backwards engineer all the way to a workflow which feels natural for a clinician, and that's not always logical. I need to give that disclaimer in. So that's one of the reasons why they end up collecting dust.
I think I agree with both. From where I see, startups don't fail because of product or capital, right? They fail because of misaligned expectations, right? If your GTM strategy works very well in the US, it might not work in the UK because the rhythm, the stakeholder, the validation is totally different. The other thing is that we cannot miss out on stakeholder incentives in the value chain. And if you do that, then your product is great, but you will not get the reward of the system. And I'll probably say that with an example. So we have all heard about Protus, right? The smart pill, right? Great product, $500 million in funding, $1.5 billion valuation, FDA cleared, huge buzz in media about the smart pill, right? Still collapsed into bankruptcy because clinicians and health systems just couldn't adopt this complex smart pill model, right? So the understanding is very clear. I mean, you have a great product, but you don't have a great GTM strategy, it's going to fail. The other example I'll give is Pear Therapeutics, my favorite, first AI-cleared digital therapeutic solution. Again, SPAC valuation 1.6 billion. Again, collapsed into bankruptcy because it was very hard for payers to reimburse it consistently, right? So great regulatory approval, fine, fantastic. System failure, you are into a death spiral. So I think what we have to learn from some of these companies is that we have to align ourselves to the system, something which Andrea said in the last panel. You have to make it so easy that the resistance to adoption is the least.
Absolutely, and I agree with the previous statements. And one of the mistakes that I quite often see is that startups are typically and scale-ups are typically led by the innovators, so the technology-driven people, with less focus on market. And this session is go-to-market strategies. So you should ask yourself very early the question: how do we go to market? What is our value proposition? Where is our market? And actually, the most important question is there a market? Because it's not because you have a great product that you can sell it. And then, of course, reimbursement plays a role. And another big hurdle is quite often that you work with your key opinion leaders, and they think you have a great product, but what I would call the workhorse physician, they cannot adopt it because they don't have the state-of-the-art equipment or hospital available to implement it. So start early in thinking about the market and how to approach the market.
Thank you, Christophe. I don't know what you guys think, but I heard a lot of foundations here. So that's very important. I heard about market validation, commercial, right, product fit. I'm a finance guy, so I'll start, and a little biased, so I'll start with the governance and financials. So Anish, we spoke, And one of the things that really came to my head and highlighted is you had a saying, if your customer lifetime value it's less than your acquisition cost, you shouldn't start your business. So let's start with this first foundation, which is governance and finance.
So I think it's important to contextualize where that came from as well, right? So we are having a conversation about what strategies do companies employ when they are going for making sure that they are understanding who's going to pay for their solution. And one of the payers that we look at are pharmaceutical companies, right? A lot of pharmaceutical companies fund these programs in order to make sure that they're part of a patient support program, they're part of some sort of a engagement and education piece. But what usually, and this is where, Ruchi, to your point, right? Where did pair fail? And where did Akili fail, for example? Both of them started with a business-to-business model to start to commercialize, but without knowing the cost of commercialization for a pharmaceutical company. And I'll just put a simple example in place, right? When a sales rep is visiting a healthcare professional, a primary care physician, not him, he goes into the specialty care category, but when you're visiting a primary care physician, every single visit costs you around 190 to 215 euros, depending on the geography that you're in, okay? If that's going to be for him, for a specialty care physician, that's going to be around 290 to 325 euros per visit. Now, let's do the math, right? So you have a solution, you're paying a certain cost for that solution, and let's say it's 300 euros worth, 400 euros worth, whatever that may be, but in order to have one visit with a healthcare professional, you're paying equal amount of money. The numbers don't work out. The numbers don't work out. And even if you're bullish enough as a pharma company and say, I'm going to do it, in a year you fail, the contract closes. So it's super important to define what your go-to-market strategy is. You need to understand what the acquisition cost is going to be, because let's say, I mean, if you look into therapeutics, right, digital therapeutics and digital health, in US right now, on an annual basis, you can get up to $1,200 per patient for the full year in the treatment. In order to convince an individual, a doctor, to prescribe your solution, it takes about 7 visits. Do the math. It's about 1,400 to 1,500 euros in order to convince the healthcare professional to have the first prescription or the first use case, and you've already kind of swallowed the cost for the full year. And by the end of the 1 year, you're going to have a dead product. Just the math doesn't work out. The math doesn't work out. So it's super important that you structure it. You know what your go-to-market, and commercialization is a very big word, and go-to-market is a very big word, right? But there is a part of market access, which is who do I need to go to in order to get my solution in the hands of the person. There is a part of who do I need to convince to make sure that that solution is paid for, and then how do I convince that patient that if you show continuity and if you show adherence on usage of that solution, then I'm profitable. All of this needs to be worked out for you to actually then create a lifetime value of the patient, because today the lifetime value of the patient on devices is very low. Is very, very low. It's lower than what it is for the drugs itself, which is on an average between 24 months to 40 months. So on a lifetime therapy, if the patient is only taking something for 24 to 40 months, we have another issue to solve for to actually create that conversion. So the financial part, we can look into it, but I think once you figure this part out is only when you actually have a sustainable business. If not, you have, like Richu mentioned, right, billions of dollars of valuation, but it doesn't take, but this is all fueled through a lot of marketing money that's put into it to get to that number. And that's just not a sustainable business, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think, thank you. I think I agree with Anish. In my mind, cost of acquisition is something that every startup should think of from the very first day, because that will help you understand what should be your customer lifetime value and how you do that calculation. So 100% agree with you. If your customer acquisition cost is greater than your CLV, it's time to stop scaling and look back into your economic model. I also feel that in MedTech, financial governance is not about conserving money. It's about being sequential. So your evidence should bring in reimbursement, which should bring in rewards or revenue. And if those are not connected, you are just burning cash. So some of the companies that I would say you can look up in terms of how they succeeded in the US market, one of the biggest one is Viz.ai. Now, Viz.ai, they didn't build a huge sales org. What they did is they became the first company to have the NTAP reimbursement in the US, which is the new technology additional reimbursement, which has just come in. And not many companies know this, but it is there for algorithms, for software, for new technology, and reimburses up to $1,000 per patient. So what happens in a typical setup is you go to a health system, you pitch your technology, and they ask you, who pays for this? And you say, you pay. And that's where the commercialization stalls. But here, they were saying that, well, Medicare covers substantial part of it. And then they picked up, and 1,000 plus hospitals commercialization by now. So it's very clear that financial governance can also be a good GTM strategy. And you need to think about it in advance. As Anish said, calculate your CAC, calculate your customer lifetime value. There are so many companies where customer lifetime value just never materialized, and that led to the company shutting down.
Ruchi, that was fantastic. I think that gives a little bit of segue of like what you're talking about, this acquisition. And as you were speaking, you also mentioned something different, which was like, do we start in the US? Do we start in Europe? That's another chicken egg problem, $1 million question. What are your thoughts?
Oh, that's a very tricky question. I have seen a lot of companies that scale outside of US, and then they become, raise 200, 300 millions, and then try and enter into the US market. And quote unquote, what I've heard from CFOs is that, well, we cannot invest in your company anymore, you're so big, but we would like to invest in your company and become the first client of yours. So these companies, I advise them to create new cos where these health systems and their venture arms can then invest in and help them grow. Otherwise, they will only have vested interest scaling other companies where they have already invested in, and they are also a client. So they do joint case studies. And so to answer your question, whether to scale first in the US and UK, it's pretty tricky, I don't think that there's a clear business success model in terms of, this succeeded or that succeeded. But always keep your company investable and understand the market dynamics. And plus, look up your competitors' cap tables.
I appreciate that, yes. I still... Go for it.
So, no, it's keeping your company investable. I'm going to quote you for that. It's super. It is actually really good. And a lot of times, look, US, everybody wants to go into US because that's where money is until Trump does something about it, right? And he's clamping down on everything in order to reduce how healthcare costs. I think there's a lot of things that he's doing it right, and it should happen in US because it needs to be more affordable healthcare. But we all forget that a fifth of the world lives not in Europe and US. It actually lives in the belt if you start from China and go all the way to Mexico. And I fail to see companies who work in health, and it's really sad that they don't target those markets just because there is a VC backing them up and saying, I need to see profitability. Nobody's talking about outcomes, and this is a problem that every healthcare system has today, which is we talk about number of beds, we don't talk about why does the patient have to occupy the beds for that much time. And it's important that we kind of do a little bit of soul searching when we look into these strategies, because there is a lot of money through foundations, through grants, through high net worth individuals that actually only focus on the belt. They don't focus on profitability. They just want to focus on better life for people. They don't have all the glorious healthcare and health system upgrades that we have in Europe and US. They don't have that basic thing. So look at your business as well on how you can make money, because you can be rich in many different ways. It's just that which is the market that you target, and do you do it becoming rich by volume, or do you do it rich based on quantity? So I just want to leave it over there because I think it's a geographical question that usually gets neglected, but it's a very important one. I mean, 5 billion people live in this little hockey stick, and that's not Europe and US. So it's important to look at that perspective as well.
Thank you both. I would say 100% agree, make it investable, and you are right. We often don't look at the rest of the world, especially as a finance guy. I do write rest of the world. But keep it investable, Amel. What does it mean? What's product market fit?
Okay, so if you look from a clinician's perspective, product market fit would mean, as I mentioned before, solving a meaningful problem, but in such a way that you can also that you don't disrupt too much. There's a red flag that I see all the time, and it really pains me every time, and that is when I hear we have a disruptive new technology. Now, imagine you're in a system which is working for a long, long time with technology they already know and that they know that works. If you disrupt them, you have a problem, right? Now, an example. Every one of us knows QWERTY, the keyboard layout, right? Does anyone of you use Dvorak keyboard layout? So I'm a bit of a geek. I'm going to geek out on this. So QWERTY was actually designed in such a way that when you type on a typewriter, those small hammers don't get jammed, so you can type normally. And when technology made that not necessary anymore, what happened is that Dvorak came around and said, okay, I'm going to make a completely new layout. You can actually set your phone to that layout, which is way more ergonomic. You can write faster. Now, no one is using it because it's disrupting what we already know. And so when thinking about a solution, what you need to do is you are supposed to improve it, but you need to improve it by increments. And that's why it's so necessary to really understand what problem am I solving for. And that's what we would say, like finance lingo, product market fit. But what it actually means is making clinical impact, and clinical impact which is pretty much worth it, right? Another thing, if I disrupt, so I understand the regulations and everything around it. I know that as medical grade or clinical grade MedTech, you need to train your users, right? But imagine a microcosmos, right? The healthcare, which is massively understaffed, and no one has time. Now, I'm a clinical lead, so when a solution comes to my door and says like, okay, we're gonna need 2 days to train your staff on this, I will say, there's the door, please walk out, and I'm gonna naturally gravitate to a solution which is way more natural to how we do things. So disrupting a workflow has a cost, no? And you should change, but not disrupt. The innovation needs to be more a gentle push in the right direction than a brute force attack.
I don't know about you guys, but make sure you core that. A doctor is telling us that innovation shouldn't be that disruptive. I think this is gold. But Christophe, everything else is great, but there's one thing that if execution is not done properly, it doesn't matter. Can you help us understand what does it mean execution? What does it mean building a right team? You know, and how to actually win in this crowded market where one mistake, like Dr. Ruchi said,
I totally agree. I think and now I'm talking as an investor, not as the marketing consultant, but when I look at teams behind the company, of course you need a technology, you need a technology expert, but I also ask them the question if they have somebody who looks at the market, if they looked at the pricing, regulatory, and most companies that I see that are successful, they typically have a seasoned guy in there who comes out of the industry, one of the big guys. That's typically a recipe for success because they used to have the budgets, they used to have the teams, that used to have all the expertise in-house. And they typically, if they are smart enough, they will hire the right either consultants or team members to execute on that. And that's what's need to be done. I mean, the technology guy alone cannot do it. And a lot of these technology savvy people, they really think they have indeed the new next disruptive product where nobody is waiting for and nobody is willing to pay for, and then yeah, you're in a dead end.
I think you have a point, and because we still have a couple more minutes, help the audience understand, right? Like roles in a company, in a startup, in the beginning to the end, they will change. A CEO role, the founder role will change. And then sometimes hiring consultants, it makes sense because you just need that fractionally. Like, how should we go about this? Like, what is the best way? Should we plant the seed and nurture someone all the way along? Or we should just be like very fractional and punctual to just bring a consultant and get stuff done?
I think you need to do both. You need to when you start your company, you already need to think about, let's say, the end of the company, basically, either being in an exit, an IPO, and particularly, and now I'm talking as an entrepreneur, thinking about yourself. How do you make yourself completely useless in the company as soon as possible? I'm not useless, I mean expendable, basically. Always ask yourself the question, if I run under a bus tomorrow, what will happen to the company? Because you're building a lot of equity, a lot of value, not for yourself only, but also for the company, for the team, and for the investors. So already have your plan B in mind when you start, and that goes for every role. I think once you have your proof of concept, you need somebody who thinks about commercialization, and typically that's not the CEO or the inventor. It's somebody with a commercial background who knows where to go, how to build a commercial team, how to motivate them. Same if you want to, because we discussed international expansion, I always ask the question, why should you go to the US first? I know it's the biggest market. And I totally agree, there is a big part of the world being neglected. But to go there, you need local expertise. You need people who know the market, not only the market, but also the culture, because selling something in Japan is completely different than selling something in France or in the UK. And even France and UK are very different.
Thank you. I guess we have a couple more minutes as well. Yeah, how about this? Dr. Ruchi, we spoke about managing your money, understand market dynamics, right? Execution. That's all we need to figure out how to win.
First thing is asking the right questions, right? So get your questions ready. Understand, so usually rather than talking about TAM slides or talking about revenue models or product market fit, I think the first thing you need to think of in your head is the behavior, right? Whether it's a clinician like me or a marketing person or a CFO, they will defend your model if it makes sense to them. So for any behavior change you bring in by a new technology, it needs to offset it with something materially. Avoid time, probably lesser cost, quicker efficiency models. So you need to ask the right question. What is it that I am bringing in this workflow as a friction that could be an opportunity for me, right? Where I'm disrupting this workflow that makes sense for them revenue-wise, right? So some of these questions in your mind have to be very, very important, right? Why should they go for me? What is in it for me? What is in it for them? How a CFO is going to defend my model even if a clinician forgets about it? So I think that's one part of it. The other very important part of it is partnerships, right? Whenever I look at MedTech companies, I think right partnerships are always a game changer, right? You look at companies like Butterfly Networks, where they always thought that their friction is the cost of the device. And it has always been the training. If you're adding steps, cognitive load, or changes in the way a clinician behaves, you need to back it up with training. So the moment they partnered in Ukraine with this company called Razom, and they built this medical education and training behind it, it led to significant adoption, right? So find out the strategic fit, find out the behavioral fit, and find out the regulatory fit for your partner. When I say strategic fit, basically it means that, together are we serving the same problem, right? Behavior fit is, are we selling to the same audience mindset? And regulatory is, if we two combine together, is the adoption going to slow down? Is the compliance going to slow down our adoption? And only when you have, these three checked in, should you go into the market together. So key partnerships are very, very important.
I guess last few words of advice, Dr. Amel.
Okay, now it works. I'm a Bosnian, so I'm loud anyways. Maybe I could even manage without a microphone. One thing that I would really like for everyone to take away is that development in MedTech is co-creation. And it's extremely important to understand who are you creating it for. I like to say that health tech is actually B2B2C, because your end user is the patient, but you're selling through the doctor, so to say. That's why it's so important to have someone to help you understand that. And I like to call our business model medical expertise as a service, right? And I like to think of it as, so imagine this, you want to climb Mount Everest. The first thing you would do is you would get a guide, right? You would get a Sherpa to help you climb it. Now, eventually, you can do it on your own, but a Sherpa a guide will get you there faster and safer. So keep that in mind when developing MedTech. You're doing something which impacts people's lives, and that's why it has to be safe.
Anish?
I think we are out of time, but I'll make it quick. So the only thing that I will leave you with it is know what you know, but also know what you don't know. And if you know what you don't know, find someone to help you with that. That's it.
All right, folks, I don't know about you, but heck of a panel. Thank you, everyone. Help me give a round of applause for Anish, Amel, Ruchi, and Christopher. Thank you.